In 1980, 8 of the world's most experienced mountaineers set themselves the ultimate challenge. They would climb Everest by a route never mastered in winter, the formidable West Ridge. They would not take advantage of additional oxygen to conserve their strength at the higher altitudes, and they would climb alone, with none of the support traditionally provided by a small army of Sherpa guides. To succeed, they would have to endure fierce storms with winds over 100 miles per hour and protect themselves from temperatures down to 40 degrees below zero. They would be climbing at the worst possible time, when Everest becomes an icy hell. In 1953, Edmund Hillary's successful ascent of Everest with Sherpa Tenzing captured the imagination of the world. Hillary climbed the South Col route with a large team of climbers and an army of Sherpas. Oxygen was used to reach the summit of the mountain because it was not known if man could survive above 26,000 feet without it. Perhaps Hillary's greatest achievement was smashing forever the psychological fear of the unknown that the summit of Everest had always represented to previous generations of climbers. Profoundly moved by his experience, Hillary has lived in the shadow of Mount Everest ever since, devoting his life to the interests of the Nepalese. He continues to take an active interest in expeditions and the new generation of climbers who are pushing far beyond what was thought possible in his day. In Kathmandu, he talks with Rouse and Burgess.
It might just tip it over the edge a bit.
Right, and that's why I think we need a bit of luck.
Yeah, and you do need, but you need luck on Everest anyway. I mean, what you're doing will be old hat, you see.
Just right, yeah. Right. We're sat here in so 20 years' time, you know, and that tree will be about twice that size. And we can turn around and say, well, you're going to solo Everest, you know. People don't change that much, do they?
They don't, no.
Situations
I think the desire to do things and the sense of challenge remains.
Yeah.
And I think that the actual skill improves. So you can do very much, you have to do harder things in order to get the same reaction that we got from what we were doing.
Yeah.
Rouse's advanced party of 4 pair their requirements to the bone and are buying locally the essentials for life on the mountain.
You got lids for these? Do you have tops for them?
Yeah, yeah.
Size, yeah? They're all on the bones, but it costs a couple of rupees, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
To go on weight. 4-piece, yeah.
Small, compact and economical as it is, the British Winter Everest expedition will still cost £15,000 to finance. The search to change money into small rupee denominations with which to pay the porters will clean out 3 banks before the day is done.
We'd like as small denominations as possible, please.
No small money.
Oh dear, well, as much as you can give us. It's like breaking the bank at Monte Carlo, isn't it? Oh, thank you. Great pile of money. Okay.
One by one.
Okay, that's the ones out. 5s. Some loose change, some 100s.
Liz Hawley, Reuters correspondent.
You're doing the West Ridge, of course. You're going, and from the Lola, from the very beginning of the ridge.
Well, we didn't have any option about this, but we're not allowed to go through the Khumbu by our permission.
Because the Japanese will be climbing that route.
Because the Japanese will be climbing through the Khumbu and up the South Col route to here, the normal route.
Liz Hawley is the link in the chain between the expedition and the outside world, and her encyclopedic knowledge of the Himalayas is drawn on by all major expeditions.
To get to the Lola, well, we certainly have one camp here to use as a kind of advanced base camp, and then we'll have a camp up on the west shoulder, hopefully to make a final assault from there.
In their attempt to scale Everest in winter by a new route and without Sherpas or oxygen, the British team will have to be prepared for some of the most unbearable conditions on Earth. In winter, Everest is a place of unimaginable hostility as the jet stream, violent currents of freezing air, descends from the higher altitudes to sweep through the Himalayan peaks. But before a foot can be placed on the mountain, the team face an 18-day route march to reach base camp. The Burgess twins, who have been climbing in small, lightweight groups for several years. Al Burgess.
8 people. It must be the smallest, I would think the smallest number of people to go against Everest, particularly in the winter. Our team really depends on a closely knit team, which is already well tried, providing there's no illness. The Japanese attempt will be huge. You know, most of the teams work out at around 30 or 40. So our team is a small team.
Alan Rouse, expedition leader.
Porters carry 30 kilos every day, and for that they get under a pound a day, somewhat under a pound a day. The Gurkha regiments in the British Army have been recruited from the Nepalese, exactly the same people as we use for porters, and they've been renowned for their strength despite being light in weight. And they've got thin legs, and they've got a build actually not all that dissimilar from a lot of modern climbers.
Hello.
Even though the team is small compared to previous expeditions, 150 porters are still required to transport the 2 tons of food and equipment to Everest Base Camp.
Some of these Sherpas start looking really nice after 3 weeks, don't they?
Oh, that's no, you don't. No, don't. Leave it.
Very friendly, these Sherpas, aren't they?
Not as good as Bass.
No, I know. Tell you what, it's expensive. You know, that Ratchis is good. You know, once you get used to it. Yeah. I remember once drinking some Ratchi on the walk into Dawagiri, and the old woman who Dad had distilled poured it out of this bottle, which was all green and furry inside.
I wonder what's in there there.
Oh, I think that's clear. I think that's German beer, isn't it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who makes it.
Yeah, expensive.
Peter Thaxton, expedition doctor.
I'd like to get to the summit very much indeed. It's very, very important for me. If anyone gets to the summit, the expedition immediately becomes a success, and that's great. But I think every climber on the trip, you know, wants to go to the summit and will do his utmost to get there if possible. The chances of being caught high up in a storm in the winter are not very inviting at all, and I think that would be one of the main dangers on the higher section. Not so much the technical difficulty or the likelihood of falling off, or even on this particular route, the likelihood of avalanches. It's just that the weather is the danger, and the danger of being caught really high up in bad weather and not being able to do a thing about it.
A Fokker friendship lumbers towards the primitive landing strip at Lukla, halfway along the trail. Aboard are the remaining members of the team. The secluded mountain village of Kumjung at 12,500 feet is the place where Brian Hall, John Porter, Joe Tasker and Paul Nunn meet up with the others. Alan Rouse.
We're now in Kumjung, in the Everest region of Nepal. We've been walking for some 14 days, and we've had some delays because of porter difficulties. There's a Japanese expedition on the mountain at the same time, trying Everest in winter, although they're going by the South Col route, or the Yak route, as the Sherpas call it, and we'll be trying the West Ridge. But they've had some 800 porters crossing the countryside, and we've found it very difficult to be able to get our 150 loads moved from Kathmandu to here. From here on, we'll be using yaks for the rest of the journey to base camp. Each yak carries about 70 kilos, so we'll have a total of 70 or 80 yaks going to base camp, and 1 or 2 Sherpani girls carrying as well for us. We're at about 12,500 feet of altitude at the moment, and so we'll need quite a long period of acclimatization after we've moved to base camp at 18,000 feet, because of course we're trying to get to the summit of Everest, 29,000 feet, without using oxygen, so we need a long period of acclimatization.
Reaching the Mecca of all mountaineers for the first time, 37-year-old Himalayan veteran Paul Nunn.
For me personally, I wouldn't say that it's overwhelmingly important whether I get to the top. I do think that for the group as a whole, it would be a very, very good thing if we did, though. One of the main reasons that I'd like to see it happen is because I want to see this sort of expedition succeed. If we can get up Everest in winter with only 8 climbers, then is it necessary for these vast armies and regiments of people with thousands of Sherpas to keep on coming here and despoiling the place at all?
At 33, Joe Tasker typifies the new breed of climbers hungry for the success that a winter ascent of Everest will bring.
Then as you're getting towards base camp, you got all the sort of nervous anticipation of how you're going to perform. I know I've climbed mountains in the past and it's worked okay in the past, so basically I'm fairly confident that I should be able to perform the same again, but there's still the same thing to go through, and Everest is, after all, the highest mountain in the world, and it'll be the highest that any of us have climbed if we get up it, and probably the most difficult undertaking we could participate in.
Everest Base Camp at 17,500 feet was reached on December the 6th. To qualify for a winter ascent, the summit of the mountain must be reached between December the 1st and January the 31st. Already they are 6 days behind schedule. Tents will have to be pitched on the desert of the lower Khumbu Glacier after hacking platforms from the solid ice. Although grim and foreboding, base camp is taking shape.
Yeah, just put down there.
To the north, the camp is overshadowed by the steep walls leading up to the Lola saddle. Any attempt to gain the Lola had previously been regarded as suicidal, as it is constantly raked by deadly avalanches. In 1975, a French climber and 4 Sherpas were swept to their deaths on the ice cliffs. An advance party set out to reconnoiter the safest route to the left of the ill-fated French attempt.
Oh, I found them again, Al. Yeah, I can see Aid there. He seems to be sheltering behind a rock or something. The others are higher up.
Maybe some rock fall.
Yeah.
Yeah,
certainly a lot of loose.
Fairly dangerous.
Lots of loose stuff there.
Yeah. Quite chossy stuff.
Yeah, he's crouching down now. I don't know quite what he's doing, but the rock certainly looks good higher up. It looks like really nice granite. Yeah. But on that lower section, it's very, very shatty.
We seem to have about 1/3 of the food here now, Wang.
John Porter has charge of the expedition's quarter-ton of food.
Base camp, which is of course your duty anyway. I will take all of the mountain food from the boxes, and I will be responsible for all the food for the mountain. I'll have to give you a few instructions.
Oh, that looks like them now there, Al. I think they're on the way down. They're crossing that snow slope again.
Yeah, it could be.
You can just see them with the naked eye there.
I'll take a look in the camera here.
Yeah, there's the 3 of them quite close together, I think, on that snow on the scree.
The line of attack for the British team is a cunning, if difficult, route up the rock buttresses to the left, hopefully avoiding most of the dangers. Joe Tasker and the Burgess twins return from having reconnoitred the route.
What was it like then? Where did you leave City? It's all right. It's pretty easy ground, but
Well, where that's
just then. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And you've got to stick together.
We were watching you through this thing. We could see you really closely on that second scree slope above that little step up there.
That first bit of ice thing, you mean?
Well, above that, just above that.
Yeah.
See where there's the snow on
See us go around to the right?
Yeah, you went out of sight there.
Oh, you see that snow patch? Do you not see us there? Because we were level with that. Yeah.
The route the British team had chosen would take them onto the Lola saddle via the boulder slope and the subsequent rock corner. This approach to the Lola, while not threatened by ice avalanches, was subject to rock falls. Doug Scott and George Bettenberg had made a foray up these slopes in 1979, and they brought back awe-stricken tales of lethal rock falls which showered down from the walls above. The route which had been chosen would be unusual in that most of the hard technical climbing would take place before Camp 1. Above the rock band at 22,500 feet, severe angled snow slopes would have to be negotiated before Camp 2 could be established. From Camp 2 to 3 would involve more snow and ice climbing with the ever-present problems of exposure and 100-mile-per-hour winds. Camp 3 would hopefully be established at about 23,500 feet, and Camp 4 would necessitate being totally exposed on the west ridge of Everest itself. Above this point, progress would be dictated by the severity of the weather. The immediate aim will be to break through onto the Lola and establish Camp 1 at 20,500 feet. Paul Nunn.
I suppose you have to describe the ascent for the best part of 1,000 feet as rock scrambling. You're kind of alternating between slopes of very loose scree and some bits, little rock walls, really quite nice, pleasant little sort of areas of granite. All the time, though, you have to watch out if there's anyone else around, that you don't kick stones down on them, or if there's anyone above you, that they don't kick stones on you. And that gives a certain kind of tension, I think, to the ascent right up onto the rock ridge, the first rock ridge.
To progress up the mountain, two-man teams will leapfrog each other. One team will climb until exhausted, laying rope lines as they go. The next team will use the fixed ropes to conserve energy, climb past the exhausted team and push further up the mountain, fixing more rope as they go. After the boulder slope and rock ridges, 2 hours of difficult climbing over rock and ice lead to the corner. This 600-foot-high barrier of dangerously loose rock will present some of the most technically demanding climbing to be encountered on the whole expedition.
Nearly there!
Al Burgess.
Well, there's a slight movement on the rope here, which means they might be ready for pulling it up.
Pull your sack when you're ready!
It's quite windy as well. I don't know if you can hear me. This new snow we've had is lying on ledges everywhere. And I'm balanced, sort of straddling a couple of big blocks, trying to crouch into the rock, so that in case any rocks come down, they won't hit me. It's a very, very loose corner, this.
The avalanches which were now sweeping off the Lola were ample justification for pushing the route up the technically more difficult rock corner. The main dangers here were delicately poised blocks of granite. Al Burgess.
By these blocks are loose. A series of huge blocks. I've got to be very careful. One of those knocked down on John could cut his rope. It gives me the hairy scaries every time I pass this block. Whoa. Whoa.
Okay, John, you can come up now.
Try and put all my weight on the ladder. Oh, sometimes it seems very difficult to do that. Christ.
So that just collapsed into have a bit more atmosphere.
last obstacle presented by the rock corner leading up to the low La is the aptly named Eggshell Traverse, an alarming collection of massive granite blocks which appear to be unsupported by the wall behind. It is essential to fix ropes up the entire route to ensure descent under any conditions, and also to enable loads of equipment and food to be carried to Camp 1. All in all, 80 loads totaling over a ton will have to be carried to the top of the corner during the course of the expedition. Unlike the larger, traditional expeditions, no Sherpas will be used as beasts of burden. John Porter.
The traverse, the Eggshell Traverse, was about 150, 200 feet to the right, and we could see that at the end of this traverse we would be on the snow of the low La. But to get there we had to cross a completely shattered wall which was undercut, and it appeared that any minute the whole wall could collapse underneath us. It was so precariously perched, like some fantastic creation of children's blocks which somebody's done their darndest to push over, but it hasn't quite yet gone. And Brian, later on this section, had a couple of big blocks collapse underneath him, and he was left dangling on the rope.
Past it. Thank goodness. Oh, my fingers are freezing.
After 5 days of determined climbing in unusually good weather, the rock corner finally succumbs, well ahead of schedule. Cracking the rock corner was a great psychological boost to the whole team, and with morale high, the snow and ice slopes leading to Camp 1 are quickly overcome. Where possible, snow caves will be dug, for no ordinary tent could withstand the devastating winds.
You select a place where anyone stepping out of that hole isn't going to fall 1,000 feet. Get it in as safe a place as possible. You dig in about 10 feet. After 10 feet, you'll turn to one side and start enlarging in a small chamber. You don't want to be lying in a small 3-foot-high coffin. That's no home at all.
After 3 days of digging at Camp 1, 2 4-man snow caves are completed and fully stocked. The snow caves would never be comfortable, but they would be infinitely preferable to a flattened tent in the middle of the night. Paul Nunn was well aware of the problems that could lie ahead.
There's something quite oppressive about open spaces, where you know that to get back, in a sense, to civilization, you've got to put one foot in front of the other quite a number of times. The thing that keeps on exercising my imagination is just what will it be like when you've got maybe 100-mile-an-hour wind whipping across it, possibly snowing as well, and you're on your last legs.
Alan Rouse leaves the security of Camp 1 and prepares for the difficult snow and ice slopes leading to Camp 2. A continuous line of climbers is stocking the Camp 1 snow cave while the rest of the team extend the route above. Despite the sterile atmosphere of winter, dysentery has hit Rouse and others in the party. At this altitude, recovery from illness is slow. Rouse, however, has other things to think about. Crossing the low La is a dreary treadmill which will have to be repeated many times. At 21,000 feet, every step is misery. The expedition begins to spread out. The team members are often separated from each other by a full day's climb as they work on different tasks. Some are at base camp, others continue to stock Camp 1, while others push on toward Camp 2. There is no overall strategy, no firm guidance from a leader. Rather, individual experience and judgment will deal with each situation as it arises. Confronting the team now is the Bergschrund, formed where the easier angled ice rears up into the steeper wall of the mountain. It is guarded by an ice-strewn crevasse. As John Porter and the Burgess twins grapple with the Bergschrund, the remainder of the team continues to ferry loads across the hostile moonscape of the Lola Plateau. Beyond, the icy escarpment of the West Ridge towers upward for 3,500 feet to the west shoulder. With continuing good weather, both the British and the Japanese teams are making good progress. Both expeditions have reached a similar height, 21,500 feet. Even after the ropes were fixed, the Bergschrund remained a place to treat with respect, especially when carrying 35-pound loads. A fixed rope may give an illusion of safety, but one false step can lead to tragedy. The crevasse separating Paul Nunn from the vertical wall of ice opposite is bridged by tenuously perched interlocking ice blocks. On the ice face itself, progress is made by digging the points of the crampons of one boot into the ice, while the other boot is held in a sling which can be moved upward by means of a friction device called a jumar. Every load will have to be carried up the Bergschrund in this time-consuming manner and is made cripplingly heavy by the debilitating effects of cold and altitude. Bad weather closes in. It comes suddenly with little warning, completely altering the character of the mountain. Al Burgess is caught in the full fury of the storm and driven down to base camp. His harrowing descent emphasizes the narrow margin between tragedy and survival.
Well, I crawled on my hands and knees, and it was windy, but I could actually manage. I was about halfway, about the slackest point, and it just picked me up, and it just sort of pushed me 5 or 6 feet in the air. It was slow, and then sort of pulled me back down again. Suddenly I was up and then down, and I was just hanging. I mean, I slithered and just hanging on this rope, and I was thinking, if that ice stick comes out, it's only in about that far. And I got my feet in, I was just hanging there, terrified, like I could not move. And the thing is that with it, my chest now is bad enough, but with the wind, I couldn't breathe. I mean, I felt I was suffocating, and I just sort of, I was just gasping and panting, and eventually just crawled and crawled until I got into a point where I could pull on the rope properly. I mean, it was the most frightening thing. If it's like that at Lola, I know it's a windy place, Lola, but I hate to think what it's like about a 9,000 foot higher. I really do.
Between them, the team spend 10 days attempting to secure Camp 2, carrying and fixing 28 rope lengths, a total of over 4,000 feet, stretching from the Lola Plateau to the rock barrier. Here, 1,000 feet above the Bergschrund, Pete Thexton and Brian Hall are halted by the barrier, a confusing sweep of granite and ice up which there appears to be no obvious route. Pete is forced leftwards as one ice groove after another resists his attempts to break through and establish Camp 2. Finally, the exhausted Brian Hall makes a last desperate effort and secures a small platform at 22,000 feet. Hacking a platform out of solid ice at this altitude is back-breaking work that can only be sustained for a few minutes at a time. After 4 hours, the platform is finally completed and Camp 2 is firmly established. The ominously erratic weather is closing in again. No sooner is the Camp 2 ice cave dug and the team is pinned down. Tasker, Hall, Thexton and Al Burgess stay up at Camp 2 for 2 fitful nights but make no further progress. Gradually they are forced to retreat all the way back to base camp. By now, almost all members of the team are affected by dysentery. Al Burgess has been hit by giardia, a particularly virulent form of this exhausting disease.
I've seen up last night. I got some bugger and I puked last night.
Yeah?
Yeah, so yeah, I never slept. It wasn't the altitude, it's been the night before was okay. And, you know, diarrhea and sick. So I don't know if you got some bad snow, probably.
Almost malevolently, the bad weather seems to be pursuing them down the mountain. And the entire team is forced back to base camp. They are now back where they started, but much weaker and with only 14 days to reach the top. Aid Burgess.
The joint here. It's in the middle of the night and the wind was banging my head all the time. I was just lay there waiting for it to go. And sure enough, I was just lay there, all the tent came down on me. And I got out like half dressed to see what I could do. I thought perhaps the pole had just disconnected, but it wasn't, it's that there. It's gone. And I mean, yesterday, up there, it was really windy yesterday and there was nothing here at all. So I don't know what it's like up there now. I mean, if you look, there's a jet stream across there. I reckon there's gusting over 100 miles an hour.
The weather refuses to clear, but the expedition has no alternative but to continue climbing. Half the team fight their way back up to Camp 2, where savage winds pin them down for 7 days. John Porter.
The inevitable came just at first light in the morning. The tent seemed to sort of lift up once and then settle back on its perch. And then the next thing, it was tilting at an angle and the fly and the poles were just ripped off the top. Aid went out first and almost immediately neither of us could see because of the ice pellets. And by the time I got one cramp on, my hands were gone completely. I staggered off down.
Right up, lad.
John Porter staggers into Camp 1, where the rest of the team are riding out the storms.
Pretty bad, eh?
Very bad.
Take the sack. You hold it okay? Turn on face. That's right. Sit down, man.
Oh, Jesus.
All right.
You had to go.
I know you did.
What was happening when the others left?
They're coming down.
They're coming down?
Yeah.
Yeah, what, pretty soon?
Well, I told them to come pretty soon because the weather was too...
Yeah. Are your hands frozen now?
No, they're fine. Oh, no, it's so warmed them up.
Yeah. My hands are freezing just here.
No, it was just because I had wet hands. First holding the tent up for Aid so he could get his boots on. Then trying to put my bastard boots on. And these stupid bloody... things. I just froze my hands twice.
Yeah?
I just lost all control. You were pretty good, Ed, to stay as long as you did, because you must have been bloody freezing.
I tell you what, curse of putting my harness on.
Yeah. Yeah, you were.
Really,
Yeah.
the thing was flipping up and hitting me in the nose.
Where I did it, when I eventually got down to the box and my hands were completely frozen, Brian offered me a cup of tea and I put my hands in it. That and a combination of the doctor's armpits, and I was fine in about 15 minutes. I sorted out the gear a bit more.
Yeah.
Battened it down a bit. I think they were going to do some as well.
Yeah.
But they'll have trouble getting down now. Actually, it's quite difficult just getting across the low law.
Yeah.
I was sort of happily chomping along, and suddenly I realised I was about to walk off into...
Although Porter makes light of it, Strapping on his crampons with wet gloves in 30 degrees of frost could have cost him his fingers, if not his life. Joe Tasker sums up progress on the mountain to date.
Since Camp 2 was destroyed by winds, bad weather has hampered progress of the expedition. In the few good days of weather that we have had, we managed to dig a snow cave at 23,500 feet, making Camp 3. We reached 24,000 feet on the West Ridge before bad weather halted progress again. Since then, John Porter and Pete Thexton have been pinned down in the snow cave at Camp 3. Al Burgess and Brian Hall are stuck in the snow cave at Camp 1. The rest of us are here at base camp, waiting for an improvement in the weather before moving up onto the mountain.
The team get what they need. Almost miraculously, everyone is back on the mountain. And in this brief spell of good weather, Camps 1, 2, and 3 are quickly retaken. With their problems almost forgotten, the team still have the chance to reach the summit before the official deadline for the winter season expires on January the 31st. Now the expedition suffers a body blow. Paul Nunn and John Porter are forced to leave the mountain due to sickness and work commitments.
It's disappointing. It's disappointing to go home and leave people you've spent such a long time with still fighting it out. I mean, there's still 5 climbers actually on the mountain, another one going back up soon, despite the fact that he's coughed his way to the point of breaking one of his ribs. Obviously, going home, you know, you feel as if you're leaving people in the lurch to some extent.
I feel disappointed that we seem to have hit a brick wall. I mean, we might still have success, but I won't be playing any part of that. And I feel disappointed that I won't be able to contribute anything more to the trip.
The team is now reduced to 6 members and has lost the chance to reach the summit during the official winter season. The sheer physical grind of putting one foot in front of the other is now compounded by the mental effort required to motivate the body to continue in the face of seemingly overwhelming odds. 8 weeks of intense cold, storms, hurricane-force winds, and dysentery have drastically reduced their strength. And worse is ahead. On the South Col, disaster strikes. Nobura Takanawa is plucked from the mountain by the wind and hurled to his death. After one more half-hearted attempt to continue, the Japanese retreat from the mountain. 5 Sherpas have frostbite, and during the bitter evacuation, 3 of them have to be carried out on yaks. In the mountain hospital at Kundi, one of the Sherpas loses the fight for life. Hospital at Kundi, one of the Sherpas loses the fight for life. On the more exposed west face, the 6 remaining British climbers are reaching their physical limits. Pete Thexton is at base camp with a racking chest infection so severe that his coughing has broken a rib. Al Burgess, Alan Rouse, and Brian Hall are all severely weakened by dysentery and riding out another storm at Camp 1. Two and a half thousand feet above them at Camp 3, Joe Tasker and Abe Burgess wait out the storm and await the support they feel is necessary to push forward and set up Camp 4. Sporadic radio contact serves only to increase the confusion and isolation between Camps 1 and 3. Joe Tasker.
Aid and I had been at Camp 3 for about 3 days, and we suspected that there was some doubts from those at Camp 1 about going on with the route. But Aid and I were quite certain that we could make it to Camp 4, but we would need support. And they asked us to, well, go along and establish Camp 4, which would take 2 or 3 days at least, to show them, to make a demonstration of what was possible. But we felt that really, if nobody was going to come up and support, and they didn't feel as if they would be able to do anything once they got to Camp 3, well, we felt that there was no point in going on. I mean, we was exposing ourselves to risk needlessly.
The British Winter Everest expedition is disintegrating. Pete Thexton at base camp.
You don't think it's worth just trying for a few more days?
We haven't been able to move, and you haven't been able to move, or you haven't moved anyway. You say it's possible to go along this ridge, but why don't you go and have a look? And the three of us here are unanimous that we're not prepared to go more than 24,000 feet because we don't think it's worth the risk.
I know I'm down at base camp and can't really give a fair opinion because I'm not up there in the conditions, but it does seem a pity to be giving up. What do you say to that? Over.
Well, it's more than a pity, Pete. Aid and I are prepared to stay up here for as long as it takes, but no one else is saying that they're prepared to come up and help. They're asking us to give a demonstration of what's possible by going along and digging Camp 4. And we already gave a demonstration yesterday by going out onto the ridge when no one else was prepared to leave the snow cave at the low Lar.
Are you still listening, Joe? Over. Base camp to Camp 3, base camp to Camp 3. Come in, please, over. Base camp to Camp 3, base camp to Camp 3. Do you read me? Over.
Camp 3 refused to read base camp. The fate of the British Winter Everest expedition now rests with Joe Tasker and Aid Burgess.
Because of the continued unsettled weather, the three at the low Lar feel that unless significant progress is made very soon, it really isn't worth carrying on. Aid and Joe up at Camp 3 tried to get across the Western Shoulder yesterday, but were unable to because although the weather was apparently clear, there were very high winds, and there seemed to be high winds again today. At 8 o'clock, it was calm and clear down at base camp, but as you can hear, I don't know that the wind is getting up here now, and I think it'll probably be very wild indeed up there. So there was really a sort of three-way discussion come argument as to whether we should go on or not. The three of us who are keener to go on do realise that the chances are very, very slim of reaching the summit, but are just, you know, more prepared to try for a bit longer.
Physically exhausted and having made the only possible decision, Aid Burgess and Joe Tasker returned to base camp. In a bitter and uncomfortable reunion, a resentful Aid Burgess sums up this final failure.
The job's way down as well. There is quite a way behind.
What was the wind like on that on the Traverse?
It wasn't bad, you know. Could it have been possible to go up today on that?
What was it like coming back across those ropes back?
The thing is, it's just so often so windy at the cave when it isn't windy on the slope itself, isn't
People
it?
sit inside the cave and think there's a bloody hurricane going on. Well, you know, I mean, okay, it was a little bit windy, you know, but I mean, it was nothing. You know, we could, as far as I'm concerned, you know, we could have got up there okay. Supposing we'd have tried yesterday, right?
Yeah.
We'd have been in no state today.
No.
To go have another go.
No.
And you can't tell until you've tried. Well, if there's no one at the cave to support you, I mean, how the hell, which day do you go?
Well,
you try and wait for the best day,
if you'd have gone, they would come up, you know.
No way would they.
On the day that you could, well, I don't think you'd have
As soon as
there.
they'd have come up, that's judging that they'd have got there, right?
Yeah.
Right, they wouldn't have done anything the next day. I mean, Alan Rouse has already done that once.
Yeah.
And he's just gone up there and gone straight back down the next day.
Yeah, so how come you think they can actually push in front then?
Well, because if they don't get up there, like Pete said on the radio this morning.
Yeah, you've got to get up there,
You've got to get up there, have a rest, and then you feel like doing something.
Yeah.
You can't do it straight after, you know, day after day. And that's why somebody has to go up there. It's a 4-man cave, you know. Get rid of the headbangers, you know, and the nauseous feelings. Get a look at the feeling.
Which you only do by spending some time there.
Plus
Even though you may be getting tired.
4 fit people, right, would have been able to dig that cave and lay rope. You see, if you're carrying rope up that west shoulder, it's an hour with a light load, right? And that's an hour me and Joe, goodness knows. Get to the west shoulder, right? Somebody wants to just bomb along it without any gear and start digging. Well, the others carry rope along it. You can't do both. As you arrive on your hands and knees at the other side, it's time to come back. You see, that's the spreading the weight of the effort. That's why we wanted someone coming up there, and that's why if nobody can or is, you know, is able to, you might as well call it a day, right? Because me and Joe can't really do it all.
It's unfortunate.
How far did you get in?
Well, it's unfortunate that the mind drives the body, and when the mind's given up, the body ceases to function well.
I agree absolutely with that.
I mean, what you said this morning on the radio, you know, get to the west shore and get an ice cave, and then somebody might be keen. Great, they might be keen, you know. I mean, you know, can you imagine Joe's attitude towards that? How do you mean get to the bloody west shore and get a cave? I dug this one, I'm laying in here. Isn't anybody else going to do any?
Everything in mountaineering is possible, of course, and I'm sure the West Ridge is possible in winter. We couldn't do it. I don't think if we'd had another month we would have done it, unless the weather had changed dramatically. The weather's been bad for a month, bad in the sense of high winds, and there just seems no real chance for us to have climbed it. But some future expedition, if they have better weather, I think they could do. But no matter how many climbers we'd had, no matter what system of organisation, I think the outcome would have been exactly the same.
I don't think we tried to the maximum. I don't think, physically, I don't think we pushed ourselves to the limit, and I don't think we stuck our necks out as regards danger.